to call to order the June 5th, 2023 Bayport City Council meeting. Let's all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Okay, you want to do the roll call, Matt?
Councilmember Carlson.
Here.
Councilmember Dahl.
Present.
Councilmember Gilmer.
Here.
Councilmember Hill.
Here.
Mayor Hansen.
Here. Okay, so first item is to approve the agenda. Unless anyone has any changes, do we have a motion to approve?
I move to approve the agenda as presented.
Thanks, Katie.
I'll second.
Thank you, Ethan. All right. All those in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? All right, agenda is approved. Next is the proclamations, commendations, petitions, and announcements. The May Recycling Award recipient is Kevin Hallen at 349 3rd Avenue South. And we would also like to recognize Dan and Kit Ridgway and Dan and Ginny Pauline. They volunteer to do landscaping and garden maintenance for our city grounds, and they've been doing it for years, and it's beautiful, and I want to make sure that they get thanked properly for all the work that they do. I don't know what we're going to do when they stop doing that. And then one other announcement that isn't on the agenda, we just at our workshop prior to this meeting decided to finalize a date for a public forum regarding the school relocation. It'll be held on June 21st at 6:00 p.m. at the library in the, I believe it's called like that upper room, St. Croix room or something, whatever the big meeting room is. So hopefully people can come to that and get more information and voice any opinions or questions that they have about that, so we can get a feel for how everyone's thinking. All right, so next up is the open forum. This is a portion of the meeting to address the City Council on subjects that are not part of the meeting agenda. The City Council may take action or reply at the time of the statement or may give direction to staff regarding investigation of comments expressed. A total of 15 minutes is allotted for public comment during the open forum, and we do have one guest from the Youth Service Bureau that is on the actual agenda. Oh, there he is. This is Mike Huntley. You want to introduce yourself?
Yes. Good evening, Mayor, council members, and residents of Bayport. My name is Michael Huntley. I'm the Executive Director of the Youth Service Bureau, and I've been with the organization since 1989, and I'm still with it because I love what we do and the service that we provide for the community. I'm going to speak with you a little bit tonight about those services. We receive support from the city of Bayport, and that is something we appreciate very much. In fact, that support is necessary for the success of our organization. Some of you might be familiar with Youth Service Bureau, and for others, this might be new information. YSB is a 501c3 nonprofit, and we've been operating in the area since 1977. And we have 3 offices, one in Stillwater, one in Woodbury, and one down in Cottage Grove. It's all one organization. We provide the services from those 3 locations. And what makes us unique is we provide a variety of early intervention and prevention services for youth and families. We're the only organization in the area that works exclusively with youth and families doing that early intervention work. Our services include diversion, family counseling, chemical health supports in the schools, youth and family education, and the newest program that we started about 8 years ago, a military family support program. We have strong partnerships with the local schools and with law enforcement, and that's where we get many of our referrals to work with young people. The financial support that we request and receive helps keep our fees very affordable so that families can access our services. We have a generous sliding fee scale, and we also provide interpreters at no cost to the families when that's needed. In 2022, we served 904 unduplicated youth, and I'll explain that in just a minute. And we delivered 4,529 hours of direct service to those youth. That number does not include the public speaking presentations that we do, where we know in 2022 we presented to over 4,500 participants. Most of those were students in school settings where we do educational presentations. Here in Bayport, we know that we served at least 19 youth that are residents of Bayport and delivered 134 hours of direct service to those youth. There may be more. Sometimes people aren't exactly sure where they live. We try and keep accurate records with that, but a lot of people just kind of say Stillwater. And we do our best to track where do families actually reside. 2022 was a challenging year for our organization. Like many, we were also impacted by the Great Resignation. So there were periods of time during the year we were operating short-staffed. We still have a couple positions that we're trying to fill, but most of the positions have been refilled, which is good news. And despite being short-staffed, we continue to produce impressive results. The quality of our service remains solid and the staff are working hard. An example of some of those outcomes, and I'll be brief, 90% of the youth who come through our diversion services do not get re-involved with law enforcement for at least a year after they complete the services. We're pretty proud of that. That's a good success number. In our counseling department, we do follow-up contacts with families about 6 months after a family starts services. And 73% of parents say that the situation that brought their family in for counseling was either resolved or made manageable in those 6 months. That's another nice number. It used to be higher. And I think what was happening is we're seeing more complicated situations, and we're taking parents self-report. And as things get a little more complicated, that success number drops just a little bit. We used to be in the 80s. And back to the 80s, about 86% of youth who come through our school-based chemical health support services show an increased resilience towards not using drugs. So we're proud of that too, especially nowadays with the easy access to drugs and other chemicals. We are asking the City of Bayport for $1,600 in support of our services in the area. And we appreciate your support and partnership as we work to improve the lives of youth and families. We have an organizational website. It's real easy. It's www.ysb.net. And if you go there, you can find lots more information. Are there any questions that I can respond to in my time frame tonight?
No questions.
By chance, not to put anyone on the spot, but any of the residents?
Anyone in the
Anyone have a question about Youth Service Bureau?
All right.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for your time.
Yeah.
I know
thank
you have a busy.
Yeah, we apparently
busy
are
night
very
tonight.
popular tonight.
Thank
Yeah.
you for allowing me to speak with you and make this request.
Thank you for coming. Yeah. The request is not on our agenda anywhere. So.
Madam Mayor, we actually budget for some of these items, including community threat and youth service bureau in the regular budget. So
That's
it's
what I
just a
thought.
line item on the regular budget.
Okay. Gotcha. Thank you for sharing all the information with us. Yeah.
Bye.
All right. You're welcome to leave. Don't feel like you got to stick around. Okay. All right. Next is the consent agenda. We're going to consider a resolution adopting items 1 through 8. The May 1st Oh, whoops, I forgot. Is anyone else here to talk about something that's not on our agenda? He is. He's leaving though.
Oh.
I'm sorry. Thank you. Good. I like totally skipped right past
I
that.
wrote this on my phone, so I'm not very good at public speaking.
I'm the same way.
We are the Swansons, just here to introduce ourselves. My name is Brennan Swanson. Some of you guys already know me. This is my daughter Lenny and my wife Kylie. Just like I said, here to introduce ourselves. We recently purchased the old JR transmission repair shop at 397 5th Avenue North, or the old Shell gas station. My wife and I have been married for 12 years. Our daughter just turned 3. We both grew up in Stillwater and attended Stillwater Area High School together, where we first met and started dating. I'm a retired professional athlete from the U.S. ski and snowboard team, where I traveled all over the world. We're dedicated to the St. Croix River Valley and chose to stay planted here and raise a family and have a successful family business. My wife and I have always loved the old Shell gas station in town. We do not plan to change the character of the property other than clean it up and maintain its history as an old gas station. We intend to continue its use as an auto repair and sales. The most important part of owning the property is to be a part of the community and a great neighbor to the other businesses and the neighborhood. We have hired professional consultants to help ensure that we work properly with the city's regulations and communicate smoothly and efficiently with the city staff. Thank you, and we look forward to being a part of Bayport and a business owner in the town.
Thank
Welcome.
you.
you.
Thanks for coming. Yeah. All right. So anyone else? I'm gonna not stop there. If anyone else wants to come up and speak about anything that's not on the agenda, you're all here for agenda items. Okay. All right. Now we'll move on to the consent agenda. We're going to consider resolution adopting items 1 through 8, the May 1st, 2023 City Council workshop minutes, the May 1st, 2023 City Council regular meeting minutes, May payables and receipts, May building, plumbing, mechanical, and zoning permits report, renewal of building inspection service agreement with Minspect, an award quote for the 2023 seal coat project, award the quote for storm damaged tree services, and the number 8 is application for on-sale Sunday and off-sale liquor licenses from Bell's Kitchen LLC for operations at 193 3rd Street North, which is NJ, not just a bar? Correct. All right. They're here. They're here. Someone's here. Okay. So do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion approving the consent agenda, items 1 through 8.
Thank you, Connie.
I'll second.
Thank you, Ethan. All right, can we have a roll call?
Councilmember Carlson.
Aye.
Councilmember Dahl.
Aye.
Councilmember Gilmore.
Aye.
Councilmember Hill.
Aye.
Mayor Hanson.
Aye.
All ayes.
All right. So now we have a public hearing, which I don't think people are here for that either. But, so the public hearing is to an overview of the city's municipal separate storm sewer system, MS4 program materials and annual report. And Matt's going to present this to us.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. On March 16, 2017, the MPCA, Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, issued a general permit for the city to essentially discharge storm water under a municipal separate storm sewer system. What the ultimate goal for that is to reduce stormwater pollution to the St. Croix River. And a big part of that is the reason that usually cities under 5,000 are not required for this at this time. But due to our proximity to the St. Croix River, we are designated as required. A portion of that permit is to create a stormwater pollution prevention plan. Essentially, it's a combination of best management practices and standing operating procedures, including education, maintenance, control techniques, system design, and engineering methods that are all related to stormwater runoff. The permit requires this and that's short for SWIP. So the permit requires or consists of essentially 6 minimum control measures. This includes public education and outreach. Essentially, the city distributes educational material regarding stormwater, public participation and involvement. This annual public meeting fulfills the requirements for that. Then there's an illicit discharge detection and elimination program. Make sure things such as oil or illegal substances aren't being dumped into the sanitary or the stormwater system. There's also construction site stormwater management, post-construction stormwater management, and municipal operations best management practice and standard procedures manual. This year, the permit was actually reissued in 2020 with enforcement for additional items starting in 2022. This has included stormwater volume control requirements. Bayport had already adopted MIDS, which is minimal impact design standards, which they were far ahead of the curve from other entities in the state. And that has to do with controlling stormwater from developments, road projects, different items like that. The update also included chloride, bacteria, and temperature, total max daily loads that were required for reduction. Luckily, neither the St. Croix River nor Perro Creek are listed as impaired for these, but based on some data that I've seen, bacteria and chloride are definitely rising in both the St. Croix and Perro Creek, and they may be impaired in the near future. The consequences of that are essentially increased regulations on the city and residents. Another item for the general permit was the additional education for salt use and pet waste. Essentially, Bayport already had a pet waste ordinance in place, and we had already provided salt education through our newsletter for a number of years. Finally, there was also new regulations related to salt storage. Luckily, Bayport only has one salt storage area for winter operations, and that's the city facility, which is already covered and met regulations that were imposed. Normally, there's an annual report that's also included with this public hearing to be compliant with the permit. However, the MPCA is currently revamping their entire system, and the annual report will actually be due next year, so we'll have to do 2 annual reports next year. There is no formal action that's required. We just need to allow anybody from the public to either ask questions about it or inquire if there are any questions related to our MS4 permit.
Okay. Does the council have any questions before or do we have to do public hearing first?
There's no public hearing.
There's no
So
public hearing.
sorry, Madam Mayor, we just call it a public hearing because that's kind of how it's listed for the MS4 permit. It's not a formal public
Okay,
hearing.
because it says I should ask anyone to provide comment if they want to.
Yep.
Okay. Anyone want to talk about the MS4? No. Okay. So no actions required.
Nope, that's where it ends.
Comments from the council? Anyone have any questions or anything? Okay. All right. There is no unfinished business. So our first new business item is considering a variance appeal of resolution 23-06 for 317 Lake Street South. And our new attorney, Eric Larson, will be presenting this to us.
Great, thank you, Madam Mayor, council members, residents of the city of Bayport. I understand that this is actually one of the rare and few times that there's actually been an appeal under the Bayport City Code of variance grant. And in this case, we do have an appeal that is before this particular body to kind of set the stage, and thanks for the city administrator for putting together bringing up the PowerPoint that I put together. It's just 7 slides, and in light of the fact that the record is actually fairly complete and is before this particular body, in that the North Addition variance had been before the City Council on February 6th, and then the East Addition variance, which is the subject of this particular appeal, was before this body on March 6th. There's really no reason to go back through that particular record. And the record from March 6th to the present is actually fairly discrete and simple, and that's what I want to really just kind of highlight on. The standard for an appeal for anybody is to essentially take a look at its decision that it's made, and then the appellant has to show that there's either been an error in that decision or provide additional information to essentially for this body to reconsider. So with that, Matt, if you could go to the next slide, I'd appreciate it. I wanted to kind of just reset the stage a little bit if I could. This is the survey that was dated December 1st of 2022, and really what it shows, it's an overview of the subject property, and it shows the 2 variances that we're talking about here. Again, it's the North Addition variance, which on the slide is in red and is just west of the high water mark and so forth. That variance is not under appeal, and that is a build out of the existing residence. Now, to set the stage, the residence in this place is what they call substandard and non-conforming, and that where it's built and so forth now would not be permitted as far as its current location. But because it was built prior to existing ordinances, obviously it's what they call a legal non-conforming use. Under a legal non-conforming use, however, you cannot have an expansion of that use unless, of course, you get a variance. In this case, the Jesperson zoning this property decided that they needed to or would like to upgrade this particular residence where they live, and we see that expansion, the bump out there toward the north. And this body found that actually that building and that addition there on the North Addition actually made some sense as far as heightening and elevating the use and not having overly an adverse impact upon that particular subject property or the areas, but it did impose some conditions. And the idea behind a condition is to, as much as possible, make sure that when you expand nonconformities, you're also looking at contracting, so you're not overall enlarging what is otherwise prohibited. You want to try to essentially keep that prohibition or that expansion down, or if anything, actually lessen. That brings us to the East Addition, and if we could go to the next slide. And the reason why I had to go to the next slide is because it's not really shown on the survey. The East Addition is on the east side, and what it is doing is it's expanding on the 3rd floor. And it's expanding that living space in the 3rd floor, so it's expanding that living space and building more towards the river. So again, we're talking about an expansion of a nonconformity within the residence itself. And it's bringing that structure and bringing it even closer to the river. Again, building of a structure that under current code is prohibited, but the primary residence here, and looking at expanding it in order to essentially enhance that primary residence, and the use of that residence was before this particular body on March 6th. Again, the City Council granted that variance, but there were a number of conditions, one of which, and there were many conditions, but I want to highlight 2 that I see are really kind of impacted here. One was to decrease the amount of impervious surface within that subject property area down to 20% or less, so that you actually have more saturation in the soil rather than runoff when you have any particular rain event and so forth. The other one was the removal of the boathouse. The boathouse is an accessory ancillary structure that had been there for many decades and very close to the river. And the idea is that is also a non-conforming use, ostensibly a legal non-conforming use, and for purposes of this, we'll just presume it is a legal non-conforming use. The idea behind the council there is well, if you're going to expand a current nonconformity, that being the principal residence, then in order to, again, make sure that you do not have an overall expansion of nonconformities on the subject property. Let's see what we can do as far as reducing other nonconformities. In this case, you have an ancillary structure that's very close to the river. Remove that. So that was the condition. We could go to the next slide, Matt. Now, under city code, a party can appeal a decision of the city council. In this case, on April 4th of 2023, the Jespersons, through their attorneys, did appeal the East Addition variance. Specifically, they wanted to keep the boathouse in. So they wanted to have the benefits of this expansion of the East Addition for their primary residence, but also, and I understand this, also keep the boathouse, because that's a nice amenity itself. Boathouse in substantial disrepair, nearly falling apart, but they wanted to explore the idea of being able to restore it and rebuild it back up to code and restore it to its historical condition. That was a statement that Jespersons had made to this body on March 6th, and this body had given the Jeffersons 45 days to provide some additional information to the city about the historical relevance and condition and nature of this particular boathouse, and show how it can be restored so that it was in concert with the primary residence, but also did not further create additional expansions and nonconformities, and would not exacerbate the other nonconformities or put some pressures on the conditions already in place. Rather than do that, however, on April 4th, their attorneys argued that as a matter of law, the boathouse removal condition was unlawful and therefore could not be a condition on that particular variance. I, as the Bayport City Attorney, looked at it and found that essentially those arguments are in error. We could go to the next slide. The arguments were twofold, and that is under 462.357. This is legal speak for you, right? That is nonconformity law. And nonconformity law basically says that if it's a legal nonconformity, a property owner can keep it, and rightfully so. And they can repair it, they can maintain it, and they can replace it, but they cannot expand it. So the lawyer argument is well, the Jeffersons are able to keep it. And that is true, they are, if they do not want the benefits of the East variance expansion. So if you don't want to expand pursuant to your East Addition application, then you can keep the boathouse and look at essentially restoring it and bringing it up to code. Or in order to essentially make sure you do not have an increase of nonconformities and otherwise non-permitted use on your property, this body said, no, you need to remove it. So as a matter of law, the condition to remove that boathouse was not unlawful. The other argument is that under Minnesota statute, that if the city does have the ability to regulate by requiring the removal of the boathouse in return to having the grant of the variance, well, that constitutes a taking of their property, entitling the Jespersons to just compensation. Again, for the same reasons, it is not a taking. Jespersons have a choice. You can keep the boathouse as is, just like the prior property owners were able to, and just as they would be able to if they were not seeking the variance. Or you can go ahead and remove this nonconformity in order to have an expanded nonconformity on your primary residence. So as a matter of law, this body rightfully made the decision and had the lawful decision that it could make as far as a condition to remove the boathouse for the grant of the East Addition variance. If we can go to the next slide. So this brings me to what we have as far as the current record today from March 6th to June 5th. And that is what is the record to support that essentially the boathouse is historical, can be essentially restored in conformance to the floodplain ordinance, in conformance to the riverway ordinance, does have historical bases, and yet would not do a disservice to either of those ordinances. It would not unduly expand the existing structures or use on that property. And this is what had been provided by the Jeffersons. And that is that they have reduced the impervious surface down to less than 20%, or at least that's what it appears to show. Great, but that was a condition separate and apart from the boathouse itself. In order to have the East variance grant to begin with. You had to reduce the impervious surfaces less than 20%. So that by itself is not a factual record in support of keeping the boathouse. So the second is actually the addition of another structure within the ordinary high water mark area. Well, anytime you have an addition of another structure, it may be possible for that property owner, just like the north addition or the east addition, to get a variance and have that structure in place for your property. But by showing the addition of a deck off to the side within the ordinary high water mark that's not right there existing today, well, that's a whole new variance process that the Jeffersons would have to go to. That's not the issue that's before this particular body. And by presenting a schematic that shows the addition of another nonconformity, another structure that is otherwise prohibited within the floodplain area, that certainly as a matter of law or as a matter of fact doesn't support keeping the boathouse. Which brings me to the next slide. Now, I want to be clear that what I've set forth here is essentially the legal standards and the legal record for this body to decide. I, however, am not dictating whatsoever as a matter of law that this body has to make one decision or the other. That discretion is for you. All I do is set forth the parameters, and I set forth essentially what the legal process is. This body had asked for evidence with respect to the historical nature and facts to support that this boathouse should stay in place and would not do a disservice to the subject property of the communities and the neighbors in light of the various ordinances we have discussed. You can deny their appeal, which basically keeps your March 6, 2023 variance in place without any amendment whatsoever. In other words, you're reaffirming your March 6, 2023. You can grant their variance appeal. And their variance appeal, the Jeffersons' appeal is that they would like to have deleted that boathouse removal condition, at which point they get their appeal and they get to keep the boathouse as well as the east addition variance as well. Or what we're, as the city attorney, advising or recommending is that you grant in part and you deny in part. And by granting in part, what you're doing is you are granting their appeal with respect to the boathouse, but only that phrase, because there was a phrase that within the conditions that said the boathouse had to be removed regardless of their build out of the east addition. Let's make this clear. They have a choice. The Jeffersons have a choice. The east addition build out or don't do the build out and keep the boathouse. Those are your two options, and it was pretty clear on the record that really that's what was being said by this body. But then, of course, denying the rest of their appeal. So that is our recommendation with respect to the third. With that, I thank you for your time and attention, and I yield the floor. One last thing, I apologize. I had been contacted this afternoon by Jefferson's attorney. Part of the process is that the Jeffersons were to have 5 minutes to also present. Jefferson's attorneys asked for greater leave, and I think it's important that they feel like they've had a fair opportunity to be heard by this body. And so I've informed that I think that's appropriate, just so long as Jeffersons understand that they need to be focused and that we do need to be sensitive to the other aspects of that's on the agenda and so forth. And I've been informed that they would keep it less than 10 minutes. Once they've had that presentation, I've also made it clear that that does not cover questions and answer period. So after the Jeffersons have made their presentations, of course, this body can engage in any questions and answers that they would like. It would not impact, of course, any of their time allocations. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So now is the time for the Jespersons to state their case. They have,
Correct.
we had allotted 5 minutes originally, and he was gonna work real hard to keep it to 5, but if he needs 10, we'll allow that. Is it 6:39?
Michelle, I practiced. I got in front
Did
of the
ya?
mirror.
Good.
Yep. Drank some coffee and wine just to
How many
see
times
if I-
did Sarah hear this spiel? No. 4, okay,
Yeah.
good.
All right.
Last one was 4 minutes, so buckle up.
Ooh, wow.
I think you can
She's like,
slow
there's no
down.
way you're gonna be able to accomplish that, so,
Or we won't understand it because you'll be talking to each other.
no. Okay. Does the tech time count in my? Oh, that's
We'll
not.
start when you start talking. You need
Setup
help?
does not
There's a
count.
lot of connections.
This one looks like the right one. Cross our fingers. What happens next? Do we have a
John, can we get the overhead, please?
And you should probably start by stating your name and address just for the record, right?
I'm Nathan Jesperson. Is that what we want to go? Oh, there we go.
There you are.
Okay.
And there's your address right there. Go ahead.
Okay, let's try. Present review and see if that works. Oh. It's not going to work great, but we'll work with it. Okay, guys, thank you again for meeting with me, giving me a chance to prove my legal right to keep this boathouse. That's my button right there. Okay. I'm going to be moving that in and out just like that. First off, this last meeting that we were at, when we got approved for our variance, Mayor Hansen and the council agreed to a 45-day period to allow us to consider the boathouse. This is her, Mayor Hansen's exact amended motion, and I just want to clarify for the record here that it was a couple things. It was historical significance and some other reason that it would be left, that is the boathouse. So, you know, the council tasked me with providing this historical significance or some other reason within those 45 days. And, you know, it's our belief that we did present this with these two right here. The boathouse is, you know, I won't, you guys have seen the legal documents here, so I don't think I need to repeat that. I think for sake of time, I don't want to get bogged down in the legal arguments of this discussion today. And, you know, essentially I have my attorney here who can answer some questions if you guys want to ask him anything. He's ready to go. I feel like this is not a super complicated matter. You know, this boathouse has been here for generations and long before the ordinance was in place. The law is clear that you can't condition a variance on the removal of a non-conforming structure. So the codes really, I feel like, are pretty clear on that, and I don't have to reiterate too much. I just want to share here and just to confirm that this is a picture of the boathouse in 1967. My neighbor was actually to come up with it. Got it today, which is pretty cool. So is she here? It's a big win. So just to kind of show that it was here. Yeah, there you go. And just to show that it was here, there are plenty of people in the neighborhood that can you know, that still live in Bayport that can also attest to this boathouse being around well before it. In fact, I think it's been for over 60 years. There's just another picture of it here. So you can see the date at the top there just for confirmation. These are actually pictures of the boathouse. The city actually put a bunch of them together, but this is 1967, 1988, all the way to 2014. And it's in different levels of condition. It looks very different from 67 as it does today. And through the process, it's been changed. The city of Bayport doesn't have a historical committee like many cities, and so we don't have the ability to go, I think, to any sort of historical body. But I feel like requiring its removal is the exact opposite of what I think Bayport is about. And I'll say that, you know, one of the things that I love about Bayport and one of the reasons why we moved here is that it's not perfect. You know, it doesn't appear to be trying to keep up with the Joneses around here. And I think that's a good thing. It feels like home. As a city, I think we need to work to protect and preserve structures like this, and respect our history. And you guys know me. I've been in front of you several times now, probably more times than you probably want. And I'm committed to Bayport, and I'm committed to caring for the land and the riverway responsibly. I'm going to handle the repair of this boathouse, of this historical boathouse, with care, as I'm entitled to by the law. One of the things I want to share with you is that I did get an appraisal of the boathouse. It's very hard to give an appraisal on a boathouse, but I'm going to hand out, I just have it here for, I just hand it to you. Thank you. It's there for record. My appraiser basically used sales of homes with and without boathouses. Had two different methods. One was a bigger group method and one was more focused. The second one was more focused on where we are on the river in St. Croix. So over the last 12 months of sales. And so these are the rough valuations. I don't know if it's an exact valuation of what it is, but it's a good rough valuation, and you'll see the breakdown there. The bid to repair the boathouse is $8,900, and so that percentage of value is 28%, keeping it under the 50% of value to repair it. And again, this is as it stands, as it currently is. So the value of the boathouse may also go up upon repair. The question mark, and Eric brought this up as well, was about the conditions, and we did provide a landscape plan, and part of that was because the council, I know Ethan and John, you guys were kind of curious about what it was going to look like, because there's more to this project than just the house. And so what we wanted to do was we wanted to show you guys what we're working on to make this work, and our objectives were clear. I felt like you guys told us, you're like, look, we want you to reduce it to under 20%. We want you to add native vegetations, get the rain garden, add trees, frame the lot, reduce the overall visual footprint from the riverway while maintaining a safe floodplain. You know, the city has asked me to accomplish at least these three, plus the boathouse at this point. There are dozens of ways to accomplish this, honestly. It was very, very hard to think through them all. One of the things that's important to note, though, is that you can't just dive into 12 different ways of doing this. You have to dive into one at a time. And when you're working with designers, because I hired a designer, you have to kind of just pick. And one of the things, and I know Matt and Sarah are very busy, but they didn't want to meet to, I asked several times to meet with them, and they didn't want to meet to go over these options. And so that just made it really hard for me I just had to kind of guess. So I put together what I thought was a plan that I thought would be, that the DNR would really appreciate, and that you guys would appreciate. So, and I know that I knew that the landscape plan wasn't going to be the final going into this. It was just showing you that what we could do. And I will say also at the workshop meeting, one thing that Matt did say to me, and a point of clarification, is that if you're going to do anything, focus on getting it under 20%. I'm like, okay, that's the mission. So as you know, Eric already showed here, this was our plan that we kind of put together. It doesn't have to be done this way. We can do it a lot of different ways if the city will work with me. But I just want to show here some of the key things that we did do. There will be trees framing the lots. We got 8 different bigger trees here. Lots of native vegetation and natural cultivar, which are really hardy in our zone. This is kind of similar to what that will look like. I didn't include that in the packet. It's just a general idea of how the riverway portion of this property will look when we're done with it. I think that's beautiful. And this is what it looks like right now. And I'll handily admit, this is not fun. We didn't think we'd have this house. We didn't think we'd be working on this for so long. And so I am a bit embarrassed by what our house looks like. And it is in disarray after the flood, this lower deck here. But this is how we are now and what we're working on. You can see all the circles of the things that we're going to remove. And this is what it's going to look like after we're done, just to give you some idea of how we're changing the look of this frontage. This is bringing the boathouse back to its original look. In fact, I have a photo here that I pulled this from. This is the new house. It's a darker look here. In fact, I'll just show the comparison so you guys can see the two. So where we are now, you can see all the native vegetation, the trees on the side. And just finally, this is a picture. I'll try to scooch this over here. How about right there? This is a picture from 1991. Really like this one because it shows the boathouse in a really good condition. A couple docks, lots of big docks back then with roofs on them. But you can see that berm right there is all grass. What it looks like currently, what it's gotten to, and what we plan to bring it to once it's all said and done, bringing that boathouse back to where it was. So, yeah. In conclusion, I guess what I've asked of you guys is to please remove that boathouse condition to my variance with the stipulation that the boathouse must be repaired within 6 to 12 months, whatever your timeline is. Happy to go after it when we're doing a project on the house. Thanks again for your time. Should I save for questions?
You could. I don't think it would hurt, unless you're tired of standing.
No, I'm not tired at all.
All right. Council, who has some questions or comments that they want to make? Ethan, you got something, I can tell. You're thinking about something, no?
I know we put the stipulation in there. The more I think about it, you guys are obviously doing something to improve the property. I don't know, I kind of struggle with it, but I'm at this point, I feel like I'm somewhat okay leaving or taking it out and letting the boathouse stand, but I'm only one person, so that's just my opinion.
Connie?
Sure.
Your stuff
I just-
goes? Yeah.
You had
Do you
a
have more
question?
questions?
I don't really have any questions. I'm getting the feeling that they're working so hard to keep this boathouse.
They
that-
are, yeah.
That's what's tearing me. And I don't feel very good tonight, so I'm not thinking straight. No, I don't really have any questions for you. I guess I was wondering, the attorney, what our attorney is saying, I'm wondering what their attorney has different to say.
It's okay if he comes up.
Be my
This is
guest.
Jake.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council.
Thank you.
I would preface it with, if Eric and I agreed on everything, I don't think either of us would have a job. So, but we obviously do disagree on the validity of the condition. The statute is pretty clear. We understand what he's saying, but the statute is clear that conditioning any approval, any structure, is a taking. So the next step would obviously be a demand for payment. Unfortunately, we don't want to go there, right? If ultimately this stays, but I think Nathan has demonstrated that he wants to do this right, and I know that there was a little bit of a miscommunication on the intent. The intent is to just repair this. It's not going to build a little garage mahal down by the water. This is just to repair it in kind, in accordance with the statute. And we believe very strongly that is allowed under state law. And we know that the contractor is able to fulfill that. So we would love to remove this condition. And if you would replace it with a condition that says, as Nathan said, we repair it within 12 months, then I think they've demonstrated that they're committed to being able to get that done. And of course, we would work very closely with staff on a design that doesn't require additional variances, or if they do because of the proximity to the water, then we would deal with that separately. But again, that plan is intended to demonstrate that they're willing to find a way to make this work, to beautify the project, to retain this structure, and to ultimately drop below that 20%.
Thank you.
John, thoughts, questions?
Mr. Larson, I want to be clear what your recommendation was with your three. You boiled it down to three options for us. Could you talk maybe for a minute or two and just clear those up for me again?
Sure. First, I want to respond to Attorney Stein. So I want to be clear on this point, is we diametrically disagree absolutely with the law. And I wanted to make it very clear to this body that I serve the interests of the city of Bayport. The last thing I want to do is put this city in any type of legal jeopardy or put it into a takings claim that has some feet and merit to it, of at least substantial merit. There's always, you can always have some arguments here, so I don't want to overly diminish his legal acumen. So I wanted to be really clear that this body, you make the decisions, and if you want to reconsider and grant the appeal and keep the boathouse, that's within your discretion. And I also want to make it clear, though, that the record was very strong as a matter of law and fact with respect to the decision made on March 6th. But if you want to remove that boathouse condition, that is within your discretion. So that is the first one, is where you're, or one of them is where you're granting their appeal. And their appeal was pretty clear. You did have that 1 month, or strike that 1 year, not 1 month, 1 year time frame in order to essentially, restore the boathouse, but also eliminate that as a condition. The other one is to deny their appeal. And by denying the appeal, you're denying everything that is set forth in their appeal, and you're just reaffirming your earlier decision. Now, the last one is where the record wasn't too clear, and I really wanted to just try to clear up that record. So that was the attorney recommendation, where you're denying in part, and you're granting in part. So what you're granting in part is really that, taking that phrase out and saying you can keep the boathouse, you just can't have the east addition that you wanted. So making that March 6th grant clear, because it wasn't as clear as I would have liked it as far as juxtaposition. Now, if you want to have something in between where all of a sudden you're going to grant and leave the boathouse in place, but think that you want to impose other conditions, you can certainly do that. But that's where that goes beyond my legal ability to forecast and mind read for you. You could also just simply say, okay, we're going to grant the appeal and you can keep the boathouse. Councilmember, is that sufficient clarification?
Yeah, that's very helpful. One of the things nobody's mentioned yet in this is the March 6th email from our building inspector, Scott Qualley, and in there, he talks about the building's roof that has failed and the building is open to the elements. The building has no door, making it a 5-sided box that's subject to uplift from wind. Wall sheeting is rotted or fallen off. So he lists 6 things here. And his last sentence is the building is beyond the point of repair or rehabilitation, doesn't conform to current building codes, and appears to be unsafe based on the comments above. So I haven't, so we can grant everything till the cows come home, but if there's not a reasonable way and a legal way to rebuild the structure, I don't understand why we would do that.
That is a good question. Can you clarify that, like the repair level? Do you know how that would work? Because it is in very bad disrepair.
That gets beyond my ability as far as a building code official and so forth, but it is fairly clear that we are talking about really near, if not replacement. The building code official made it clear that the existing foundation would have to be replaced in its entirety. So all of a sudden you're looking at essentially from a ground up what you would need to have as far as footings, if any, with respect to that foundation. I don't know. And it seems pretty clear based upon what the building official is talking about is essentially a replacement of pretty much all of the current structures. You're also going to have to ensure that you're dealing with flood-proofing materials, since you're in a floodplain that, is subject to flooding. Of course, we all know that, and the Jespersons know that as well. What they did submit did not establish exactly what those materials were, much less the design and the construction. Would the nature of that construction actually meet current building code for a structure within the floodplain area? Again, that would be a situation where really we're not talking about whether it can be replaced. We're talking about how it can be replaced and the costs and everything that you'd have to do. What would you have to essentially revisit its current elevation? Remember back in 2002, the variants were granted in order to essentially raise the elevation of the primary living structure itself. So yeah, there were a lot of dynamics there that, frankly, the Jespersons really, it would have been nice if they had explored to show that indeed to retain the historical significance of it, they have the wherewithal and the understanding what it would take to replace it. At the same time, if you remove the condition, they're still going to have to meet all those building code requirements and so forth. And as a layperson, I think that 2-page report of an 8,900 estimate, is that accurate? Maybe, probably not, for all the reasons I've stated. But okay, the burden's on them.
Can you elaborate any further on what you know about rebuild versus kind of repair of something like that? Or is it just not even part of the realm of discussion because it's already non-conforming and all that?
Madam Mayor, at this point, yeah, we haven't pursued
Okay.
any further investigation on that. We'd have to take a closer look about those parameters.
Yeah, I mean, from the pictures, it looks pretty hopeless for like just being able to, put on a few extra boards and it'll be fine. It looks like it needs to be redone, and I agree, $8,900 seems really low considering what it costs to put a pavilion in.
Yeah, but $8,900 really, that's not our concern.
Well, it is if
That's
it's
gonna fall onto them.
Yeah.
And I think.
I think he was
I've had
looking
two
at the
houses that are-
percentage of like the replace. I assume that has some
Well,
significance
that's
to
fine.
whether
If he
you
goes
can
over
do it.
budget, he's gonna go over budget. That's
No, I
all.
think it's like a rule about if it costs more to replace than to repair or something, isn't there? Do you want to explain?
Yeah, Madam Mayor, if
Yeah.
I may. So the way that the statute is written is any nonconformity can be repaired, replaced, but it cannot be expanded, altered, or enlarged. So the intent is that that bid was to repair the structure in its current condition. There are some exemptions for abandonment. This has not been abandoned, and also destruction by fire or other peril. Because this building is still standing and it hasn't been destroyed, even if it has, you can still repair it up to 50% of the value. And that's why as long as you pull a permit when it is within, I believe it's 180 days. So because the building hasn't been condemned, because it's still standing, because it still stores paddle boards and other equipment, it hasn't been destroyed. And that's what those numbers were for. And the truth is there's a pretty substantial value on a structure like that to have it. And with a $9,000 investment, it would add a lot of value to the property.
Is it the value of it in its current condition, or the value of it if it were in its?
That was the current condition, what I showed you, not the future condition.
You're saying that it's valued at like $30,000 to $40,000 currently?
Just having a boathouse, it's a very rare piece of.
I think there's.
It's just rare to have a boathouse on a property.
Yeah, I understand that. Yeah.
In the world, let alone in this general area. So it has a value. It had a value when I bought the place. I was very excited about that. So,
and that is due in part to Minnesota's very strong protections for legally non-conforming structures, because it is understood that unless that structure has been condemned, you have the right to repair it or replace, as long as you do not expand or alter and enlarge. But the intent here is to truly just repair the structure, as he indicated in the photos.
Katie, we haven't heard from you.
So I see it like right now it's 20, like it's supposed to get under 20%. Right now you're at 23.6. With keeping the boathouse, you can make it under 20 in what plausible way with adding the addition and doing that?
Yeah.
Like which, can you tell me? I mean, I see some of it, but it's hard to like
It's not adding
process,
up.
you know, it's not adding up in my mind. Like numbers aren't adding up. How are you getting a third story and repairing this, which is adding to the numbers, but then you're, you know, you know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I really built a story there with that, and it's just a demonstration there that we could do. I mean, I moved the deck off to the side because I thought that the city would rather me take more of the river frontage and move it off to the side. We don't have to do that. I could leave the back patio, and it's roughly the same size, or the riverside patio, and not disturb any of that. And we still are falling 150 to 200 square feet under 20%. So our last calculation came to 19.1%.
Do decks count or not count? Wasn't that up recently for discussion?
Councilmember Dahl, currently our ordinance does classify that as impervious.
And that was another reason why we thought deck would be better, because even though it is classified as impervious, it actually does let a lot of water through as opposed to the patio. So,
But it seems like the deck that you want to make is still on the other side of the 100 foot.
The deck is, I mean, it's being built in the floodplain, so it can't even be done, right? I mean,
Yeah,
what's
that's
been
what I was
proposed
wondering,
is
like,
nothing
it's
that
already-
it would be a whole nother variance.
it would be a
Yeah.
whole nother variance, which wouldn't have to be dealt with right now. And we don't have to do that at all. Like I said, I thought it would be something that would be interesting for the DNR and the Riverway. But if it's not, then we don't need to.
I just don't want to like get the DNR mad because we're, you know, like we're trying to make that 100 feet look prettier for everybody and the animals and everything. So I would hate to like go against them again.
Well, that was the other reason, is that we put her behind the trees there. I don't know if you guys saw that in the visual.
Yeah, but it's still on the other side of the 100, correct?
Can I actually show this? Because I feel like
Because you could move it back by your garage, correct? And then you would have no problem
And
with
we
it.
might. This was just, we were trying to hide it so that from the river view, no one could see the deck. Because right now, our deck and patios, everything's visual from the riverway. So we're moving one deck, 3 patios in order to move one deck to the side behind the trees. It was a visual, like what the DNR cares about is they want to see a natural riverway. And so we tried to hide it. We could push it back more. We can explore, but we didn't get the chance to explore that with the city. So there's a lot of things that you might not see, but you can see where all of the furniture are. That's all hard surface in our original.
I'm not able to pop it up here.
Yeah,
on the screen,
can he have access
but it might be
again?
helpful to have a visual,
John?
if we're able to.
Is the deck considered in the 20% number?
It should
the
be.
proposed deck,
I don't know if
or
they
not?
counted it, but
Okay.
it should be counted.
is.
Okay.
So just
I mean, I
bring-
don't know that I agree with it being counted. I think we need to look at our ordinance about that, but currently that is our ordinance.
So if you look here at the current structure, this is all patio block right here, and this is a whole deck right down here at the bottom. It's on the river, or right by the river. This deck, and then there's another patio over here. We're removing all of these,
Does
and
that
also
answer your
removing some
question,
of the
Katie?
wall. And then by bringing the deck over to the side here, it brings us behind these trees. And as you can see, even with this picture here, you wouldn't see anything there. And so it makes all of this greenery. That's why we proposed it that way. Again, I don't need to reiterate again, but
We can do it.
yes, you guys get, I think, what I'm trying to, yeah.
So this is what I'm struggling with. I get it. I would want to keep that boathouse if I were you. I feel like we kind of made it a deal at the last meeting, and we said, if you can prove that there's a really good reason to keep it, other than, yeah, it would be nice to have, that it should be removed. So that's what I'm torn by. It's like, I just feel like we made a deal, and I don't feel like it was really proven enough that it has. I mean, yeah, it's old. I was born in 1967. I'm old. But am I historically significant because of that? No, I'm just old.
Sure you are.
No, I just feel like, I don't know if that was really, I know I said, or some other reason, but I just haven't gotten a good enough reason to feel compelled to say, yeah, they should be able to keep it because of that. And I agree, it's a cool thing and it's rare. It's just in such disrepair, and it's part of the deal we already kind of made, and that was already a hard fought fight, you know, to give you the East Edition as it was. You know, that was already outside. We were going against the DNR on that. So I'm struggling. I don't know, are there people here that came to try to support the Jespersons that live near there and want to talk about it? Because I'd be willing to just hear what, or maybe there's people here that are opposed to this and hope that we deny this because of the Riverway or whatever. I just want to understand why there's this huge crowd here, if that's what people are here for. Because, you know, if the neighbors feel like they should be able to do this, that may sway me.
Absolutely.
Yes, that's a house that's had some difficulties, and we'd all like to see it get some of those difficulties.
I don't want it coming back that the DNR is now gonna see us.
So you're.
Yeah.
So like right
guys
now,
are
we're like on both
support,
sides, like.
just-
Okay, wait, one at a time, you guys. So Katie was saying, what?
Yeah, it's just hard, like, I don't wanna go, again, like, we already went against the DNR, I don't want them to like, again, be like, well, now you're breaking the law again, so now we're gonna bring up a lawsuit, but then now, like, it seemed like maybe this will be a lawsuit as well if we don't say yes, so it's really hard when you're
Yes.
put in the middle, because it's, in my heart, I know it's right, you know, but do I let them do it? Because then if I let everybody do it, then when is it gonna stop?
Yeah,
Oh, well, you let them do it, the DNR won't care, and then everybody
yeah.
on the lake
that's a
or on the
good
river is
No.
gonna want, something.
I asked the question about setting precedent, and
Yeah.
the lawyer, Eric, said, in short, no, but yes, if there is a very similar situation,
Mm-hmm.
within a month or two of us approving this, that's the only time that anybody could ever use precedent on it. So it doesn't set a precedent, and to be honest with you, it's ridiculous. They're not trying to ruin the riverway. I mean, that's what everyone's acting like. I understand there's ordinances and laws and everything else, and maybe I'm just not, you know, I can't deny somebody because somebody 30 years ago wrote an ordinance, and you know, I don't know. I'm a big believer we need to change some of these ordinances to let people do more things, whether it's in our business.
Okay. Connie, you haven't really weighed in.
Oh, I did, a little
Like,
bit.
a little bit. I still don't understand where you lean, I guess, so.
Well, I was leaning with the rest of us earlier, but like I say, I feel like they're here, they're fighting so hard to keep something that seems to be very relevant and important to them. And I also feel like they've got the support of their
Yeah,
neighbors.
which is impressive, yeah.
So I guess I'm tending to flip and go with Ethan. And I guess I'm not worried about the DNR.
I'm not either. They don't
Yeah,
want
That's
us
not
to
my
do it.
concern.
I'm not as concerned about
I
DNR.
was more concerned like how the neighbors felt, what it was going to look like from the river. I would like to make sure though, whatever, that you do give us the materials so we know they're all that. I would stand by that, you know. And I guess after they showed me that picture up there where it was kind of,
The old fashioned, I thought it was gonna be totally like a brand new, but it looks like you're literally just trying to make it look like it did
so
in
I guess
1960s.
I don't normally flip flop, but but I guess I'm kind of leaning more with Adam. I mean Adam.
Ethan.
Adam. Oh, Ethan. I just miss Adam. That I feel like if they want it that bad, I guess I just.
Yeah, and it was tough even at that meeting when we were making that stipulation. I was having a hard time with it because I get all of the ordinance things, and I get that it didn't fit and all that, but it's just, it's really hard to, like, you go against all of your staff recommendations,
I know, and that's what I'm saying.
your
is you
legal
don't change
recommendations, you know, and you're like, but you kind of go with your gut too, and I don't know. What is your gut telling you, John? I feel like you're leaning towards the other way, but I don't really know.
Yeah.
Is there anything you want to add to, like, no? Okay. No?
I'm like right in the middle, I'm sorry.
You're
I'm
having
on
a
both
hard time.
sides.
I know, it's hard. We do have to make a decision, though.
I think, I mean, we can apply different factors in different ways and let your common sense or your horse sense or whatever, but I think that's specifically why we have ordinances and things like that, is to be able to look at it objectively in black and white and decide based on that. So it's pretty clear to me.
That's also why we have variances.
And like I said before, some of these ordinances are so out of date.
We heard
We all
you.
know that. I mean, our
We
old
don't
mayor
know
used
that.
to
You know, how old is it? Do you know for sure?
I don't know that
Yeah, we don't
specific one,
Well-
but I know this town is 100 years old, and when you look at, there used to be a cat leash law in this town, an ordinance. I think you guys fixed that before I got on here. It's like, what kind of lunatic would put a cat on a leash?
Is
Those kind of
there-
things. I'm not saying this is like the
Yeah.
exact example, but we shouldn't just be like, nope, deny. The role of government shouldn't be constantly saying no to everybody, and that's what I feel like we do far too often in every aspect of my life, and not just with the city, with anything I've ever had to deal with. You go to any government agency and it's like, no, you can't do this, you can't do this. And I get, you can't just let everybody do everything, all footloose and fancy free, but this to me is a no-brainer, because I understand they're not gonna make this thing look ugly. There's 7 houses down there, and this one looks like a cat. It's completely the worst. No offense. You guys wanna change that. You guys wanna change that. It looks like a tiny cabin compared to those other ones down there. And it's like, why not make it look nice, and it's gonna be fit with everything else? And I don't know. Again, I won't say
I think
anymore.
we already made that agreement that,
Yeah.
yeah, they can make the improvements to the house. This is a separate issue.
I would-
All of it,
if-
the shoreline,
If that
the boathouse.
boathouse had been maintained at all, so I have a unique perspective. I was very good friends with the person that lived in the house to the north of there when I was in elementary school in the 70s. And so, of course, you grow up playing on the river and stuff, and I spent some time in that boathouse was old, and I don't know where some of these more recent pictures came from. It was old and like that when I was a kid in the 70s, and it just has been neglected. I don't think it's looked great for a long time, but maybe
So let's make it
Fix it.
Make it look
great.
And you have,
So-
you have somebody who wants to put
If
the
it-
effort into it.
Yeah.
You know, living on the river is
People
not.
If you want to talk, let's have you talk up here so everyone, it's on the record and we can hear you. But I'm curious, I mean, obviously you went and you have people that are in support of you. Did you talk to any neighbors that thought it was a bad idea to restore it?
I think
They
that
just
was
didn't
like all the
come?
neighbors, to be
I
honest.
didn't talk to anybody that said it was, but.
Okay,
A lot of people said that it's important to keep,
yeah, okay.
so, and we believe it.
Okay, well, unless we have more questions or discussion, I suppose we should make a decision.
I'll make a motion to approve the appeal.
And I'll second Ethan's motion. With that motion, is that when you put in, like, your,
I feel like
No,
if
we're just
you,
approving this,
okay,
and any other
okay.
variances are gonna come later.
okay.
is that the case, or can they make a motion with other stipulations attached to it?
You can, and that is gonna be that motion where you're denying in part and granting in part. Right now, what you're, the motion that's before this body is that you're granting the appeal. And the appeal is that the boathouse would remain and that it would be restored up to code within 1 year. It's as simple as that.
And is there more to it, like,
If
I thought,
if
Connie
the
wanted more
Jeffersons want
details.
to proceed forward with the design schematic that they have with the deck or some iteration thereof, then they would have to go through a variance process. But what I'm hearing is that is a possibility, but they're looking at exploring various options. And it's only when you have something very clearly before, the city to actually look at and then also evaluate what impacts that would have with respect to both the Riverway ordinance as well as the floodplain, and obviously engage the DNR. We'll see what issues would arise from that.
Yeah,
Like, I
no,
think-
Michelle, my
I
only
think Connie,
other,
excuse me, like Connie, what was it that you
well,
wanted?
my other issue was that they would use the material. I wanted to somewhere ensure that they would use the
Yeah.
materials
Is there a
that would
way
be
to,
required.
is that part,
for
is that just
flood.
guaranteed because it will be inspected? Or
They will
what's-
not get a building permit until they can show that they will be using the materials and they will have
Okay.
the design and
So
the
that's kinda
construction
what-
that meets code.
It's just automatic.
Otherwise, they do not get a building permit. And again, the building official and so forth indicates that at least as currently proposed, that quote and so forth is not going to be sufficient to get a building permit. And I just wanted to make that very clear. And as a result, the price is there. I also want to make it very clear that I tried to get away from the takings and issue. I vociferously disagree with their attorney that it's a takings that they have established with their appraisal and all of that, because frankly, I think that's thin soup with respect to that issue. And but that was not the basis that this body made a decision on March 6th. I've been doing this for as long as Attorney Stein has. I have represented property owners in just compensation claims, and I've also represented the governmental entity. I really want to keep this where I believe it belongs. And that is don't make a decision because you're afraid the DNR is going to sue you. Don't make a decision because the Jeffersons are going to sue you. I think those are equally thin. Make a decision based upon what you think is right, based upon your code and the facts before you.
Ethan, did you have a comment you wanted to make? I'm
No,
sorry. that I
we've had in the past where we've made motions in a second, and then we went into discussion, and we were told we couldn't discuss once that's happened, so.
I think it's
just
once you've
wanted-
like voted on it, but
I thought it was
Okay.
during that time, but maybe I'm wrong. No, I have
Okay.
nothing else to say.
technically that's how you're supposed to do it, but we always discuss and then make motions, which.
Correct.
But,
We already discussed.
I know, but she wanted to make sure that the motion was appropriate before she seconded it, so I think that was
I
okay.
just wanted to confirm it, yeah.
Okay, so we have a motion to grant the appeal, and from Ethan, and we have a second from Connie. I don't think we would need a roll call, right? We would just,
You might want to do a
We have
roll
to
call
roll call?
just to make
Okay.
sure the
Roll
record's
call.
clear.
so the record is clear. Let's do it.
Councilmember Carlson.
Aye.
Councilmember Dahl.
Nay.
Councilmember Gilmore.
Aye.
Councilmember Hill.
Aye.
Mayor Hansen.
It's all right, it's been 12 years. I'm gonna have to say aye.
That's a bad
Thank you very much.
I guess.
Okay, well, that was a lot of time spent on the Jesperson stuff in general. But thank you all for coming out and supporting them, so we understood how you felt about this, because we would not have known if you weren't here to do that. And I think that is important. It was important for me, and it helped me to go with the way my gut was leaning, even though I understand that there was all of the legal reasons to not do it that way. It didn't feel right to me to make him take it down, so. All right, so question for the audience. If you are compelled to stay to listen to more, please do so. Otherwise, I'll give us a moment for everybody to leave, because I don't want a bunch of commotion while we move on. So if you're all planning to stay for the rest, that's great. I just want to give you a minute. Okay. All right. I'm sure since many people live on the river, they're here to listen about the floodplain as well. Okay. So new business point number 2, consider amendments to Appendix E, floodplain management of the Bayport City Code of Ordinances. And this is going to be presented by Sarah.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The floodplain management ordinance is considered an overlay ordinance that applies to properties located within the boundaries of the floodway and the flood-fridge districts of the St. Croix River, which are established by FEMA and administered by local communities and the DNR. The purpose of this ordinance is to identify a reasonable method of analyzing flood hazards and to establish provisions to minimize potential loss of property and extraordinary public expenditures due to flooding. In order to participate in the National Flood Insurance Program, which offers flood and federal disaster insurance to all property owners, the city is required to adopt a floodplain management ordinance and subsequent updates. A majority of text included in the ordinance update has been prepared by the DNR and is required to be adopted to comply with the flood insurance program. Other amendments that have been incorporated are intended to eliminate confusing concepts, clarify permit requirements, assist with substantial damage or improvement determinations, and ensure consistency amongst state rules, federal regulations, and FEMA policy. A few sections of the ordinance are optional for communities to adopt, which are highlighted in blue text with comments noted in the margin of your draft ordinance in your packet. However, because these sections are intended to minimize public risk in the event of a flood and help clarify and provide guidance to staff on how to administer certain provisions, staff feels it would be beneficial for the city to adopt these sections. The Planning Commission held a public hearing on the ordinance amendments on May 22nd. No public comments were heard at the Planning Commission meeting, and the Planning Commission did recommend approval to the City Council 5-0. Since the City Council packet was posted on the website for tonight's meeting, we did receive a few comments from the public, which Matt is going to address. Then the City Council will have the opportunity to ask questions of staff, and we also do have a representative here from the DNR for technical questions.
Thank you, Sarah. Madam Mayor, members of the council. We did receive a few emails that indicated some concerns about this ordinance. I think there's some misinterpretation potentially about what this entails. Two of the items that they were concerned about was the idea that city staff would be entering onto residential property without a reason to be there and just to inspect properties. That is not city policy. Essentially, city policy is that if there is just cause, such as a complaint on a property or work being completed without a permit that can be visually identified from the street, then the process is to enter onto the property, determine what is being completed, and potentially help make a correction, essentially, or complete a stop work order. The other concern kind of regarded permitting. It's the need to make potential repairs due to a flood, a fire, or a natural disaster after that happens. Currently, depending on what happens to your property would be the factor in determining if you need a building permit. So if you happen to have shingles, or a small amount of shingles or siding that comes off your shed or garage, that obviously would not require a permit. If you have a garage that has been flooded and needs to be reconstructed, or if your garage was destroyed by a tornado, as with every new construction or reconstruction, the city could easily be contacted to determine whether you need a building permit for that. So,
And just to be clear, that both of those things were already part of the
Correct.
Ordinance, right? Nothing changed on either
Correct.
one of those.
That's the city process currently. Neither of those items changed, and those were the kind of the major ones that were brought up in emails that we received.
Okay. So to summarize, the changes that we're making are being made to basically align with changes that were made at the state level. Is that a nice, accurate synopsis? Mm-hmm. And there's nothing related to entering people's property without permission there's no new thing related to entering property or permitting that is any different than it was before. So I'm not sure if there are other concerns out there or still concerns about the ordinance? If so, I guess I'm open to people coming up to speak. Come on up, you'd have to stand up here and tell us who you are and where you live and.
No problem with that. Name is Chris Hayner. I live at 11 Point Road. I've been a lifelong resident of the town of Bayport. I've lived on the river for basically 45 years. So it's quite a while here. The real point that I have here is that they are trying to change the floodway level, which is same as pool level. Right now, that they, as the DNR, can govern at the water level of 674.5, which is normal pool. They want to change the floodway level now to 679, which is 4.5 feet more. And if you're in a building, 4.5 feet doesn't seem like a lot because it's a vertical rise. Well, when you're a property owner, most of us don't have a vertical wall or a cliff or whatever, and say we have a sloping lawn. Well, 4.5 feet can cover a whole lot of property. And what they're trying to do here then is to have it where in that zone, and again, it's going to vary from yard to yard, or that they want to control more of it, therefore hamstringing us or choking us as to what we want to do more with their property. And again, so that's the real crux of my thing. And understand that 4.5 feet that they're talking about is 20%, over 20% of the vertical rise that happened in 1965.
Can you show me, excuse me, which of the points in the, so we have the blue lined version from the state. Do you have that I can see what you're referencing? Because I don't remember seeing that, I guess, a change in the, or do you guys know what he's referencing? Can you point me to it, please?
I'm working on that.
Well, I didn't know if the staff could find it as well.
Let me put on my cheaters here and see what I can find here.
Can you say that number again, please?
Which one?
Yeah, I feel like there's.
All right. Yeah.
I feel like something was weird with the number. That's why I wanted to see it in writing.
It was 675 to 679. 4.5, 689.
I gotta find it here.
But
You need to be very careful on that.
okay, you'll have your chance, Phil, if you want to come up later. But let's just first hear what Chris has to say.
Madam Mayor,
Yeah.
it's 3.3.
3 point. Oh, I'm way past that. That's why. Okay. 3.3. iPads are very touchy. Okay, so the floodway district.
That's the big one they're trying to change.
I don't see any. Am I in the wrong part where it's not blue lined?
I'm sorry, Madam Mayor, that's not the blue line version. The 3.3 is in our version.
Oh, your version. Oh, I wanted
afterwards.
okay. I wanted to
Yep.
see the blue line change, but we changed it specifically. The state didn't change that.
No,
Or-
that
I'm
was
confused.
in regards to a state change. It might not be blue lined in the DNR version.
It's not. Okay.
So it changed or didn't change?
Yep, it is actually still 3.3 in the DNR version.
It's just there's no blue lining on it, so
Well,
it doesn't look
and the
like a
reason it
change.
wasn't blue lined is because only those elevations changed. That falls on us. So
Okay. So I'm sorry. iPads are so touchy. Every time I try to go to the next page, it really goes crazy. Okay.
So what I'm hoping is that is not a incremental bump in something they want to control when you want
Yeah.
to take over 20% of the total height that the river typically rises. And they
Can
want to
we-
be able to put more restrictions into this area. And again, it varies from yard to yard. Well, 20% of something is just huge in one big jump. And as you well know, every time they do something, the Minnesota DNR is always restrictive. They never give us more freedom on our property. And for them to come in and try to want to take, again, this, what I'll call 20% increase in height away from us as to how we can use our property, to me, it's just ludicrous.
Can you help explain
Yeah,
maybe
yeah,
why that's happening,
yeah.
or just so
Madam
we can
Mayor,
understand?
we do have representative from the Minnesota DNR here. He can definitely talk to it, but what we'd prefer to do is if there's specific concerns, unless this is everybody's exact concern,
Okay.
if we can hear everybody's, keep a running
You've
tally.
heard my concern
Yes.
here, that, again, they take, now they want 20% more. There's already laws that govern all of this property. They just wanted to make it more restrictive over a larger area of something that we own. This
Okay.
is not state property, it's private property, and they want to
Understood.
control more. So thank you for your time.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So do we have other issues with the ordinance that people would like to voice, or is that what people are here for?
What is the big hurry in trying to?
If you want to talk, can you please come up to the podium so we,
Why
come on up so we can hear who, you gotta say who you are,
ordinance? My
where
name
you
is
live.
Jane Kives. I live at the end of Lake Street on the river. Living on the river is not easy, and we all abide by a million strictures. But I want to know why these things came out on Friday, and you got to vote for them tonight. And we
Oh,
don't have time to.
it's actually
put
been
'em-
out there for quite a while. It went through the planning commission. They already made their recommendation to us. It wasn't just Friday that this was spoken
I was
about.
not notified by any
Okay, sorry.
means, and I'm on the email list. I didn't see anything about new ordinances and all of that stuff.
Yeah, how does that work? If you get city council packet information, do you also get planning commission information? I don't know. I think I signed up for everything, so I don't know how it all works. So you may have to change your settings in what information you receive so you can make sure you get planning commission things? No?
Well, I mean, I usually get stuff that's
Okay.
important about.
All right. Well, there was no intentional holding back of information from anyone. We did not do that
Well,
to,
I think it's a
Yeah.
rush to judgment here, and I wish you would prolong.
well, we may decide to do that after we get more information. We'll
That's my
see.
hope.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else have other concerns they would like to voice? All right, Phil, come on up.
Much as I want to. Phil St. Ors. I live on the lake down there. First off, I think you did a good job on Jasperson's political science major. Bottom line is, elected officials, by definition, are supposed to keep track of the bureaucracies in the world. IRS, DNR, you name it. That's your job. So you did your job tonight. Good job. The boathouse has been there for 70 plus years.
Want to talk about the ordinance that we're talking about now?
I'm just throwing
Okay.
my 2 cents in there.
Thanks.
Because I do have free time.
Oh, we've been here since 4, so,
Yeah,
you know.
well, I don't think, I didn't get notified on that documentation. So how is the notification process done?
Sarah?
And Mayor, I'll give an explanation. When we amend the ordinance, we're required to notify the DNR 30 days. We've been working on this for several months now. So when we finally had a draft ordinance, we're required to publish notice in the paper, which was done on May 5th. The notice has been posted here at City Hall since that time. The Planning Commission had the public hearing. No one came. There was no public comments.
You're not allowed to comment at a workshop that you had. And you're not
It was a
conforming.
planning commission meeting, not a workshop.
Yeah, but you're not conforming to the Minnesota state statutes of notification of changes in municipality ordinances.
I believe we are, but
I just
let
looked it
Sarah
up.
continue.
So
Please
10
let
days
Sarah continue.
prior to tonight's meeting, there was an email blast sent out sending.
The
notifying
document changes were
people.
not sent out. Who received them? Nobody.
Okay, so Carl, you did. Thank you.
Who are you?
Oh,
Oh, that's
So-
not fair.
There is a notification system, and there are different settings for signing up via the website. So Planning Commission, City Council, just general city notices. The email blast that was sent out for this particular meeting was sent out 10 days prior, and it was through the general notification.
That was the meeting notice. I didn't get it, but that was the meeting notice. Bottom line is you're supposed to send out the changes according to Minnesota state statute.
That notice did reflect.
The changes, the packet, those showed up on Friday at 1:09. You didn't send out the changes.
I would defer to our attorney on that.
yeah, okay.
Okay, attorney, did you read, are you up on the current 2022 changes in the municipality notifications of residents in the state of Minnesota?
I'm aware of the law with respect to requirements on notification with respect to ordinance and ordinance amendments that is imposed upon all municipalities and so forth. And I am fairly confident that your city administrator and your city planner, who are also very educated and experienced with it and so forth, ensured that this particular ordinance was
Could you rattle off
set
that
forth.
ordinance for us?
So I don't memorize
Phil,
the
It's very
please.
short.
statutes.
Phil.
It's very short.
Jeez,
Council, I'm not going to
Yeah.
get into a legal argument with you and so forth. If you have a particular statute and you can show that the facts and so forth indicated that there were some issues with respect to notification, then I'm sure that the city staff will make sure that that this is revisited and a renotice is done if that is indeed the case. If it was noticed appropriately and so forth, and I have to presume that it is at this point, we will proceed accordingly.
All right, thank you, Phil.
Well, it was shipped out and a number of people read it, because this thing went through like a fire through the community over this weekend. And numerous people read it, and read it in groups. And I think you're not correct on the understanding of it.
Well, thank you. I guess that we
I'm not done
we will have
talking. I'm not done
documentation
talking.
about that.
I'm not done
I'm
talking.
pretty sure this is
I'm-
my meeting, Phil.
Sir,
so-
sir,
I
the
get a
mayor
certain
mayor
amount of minutes
controls,
to
the mayor
talk.
controls, the mayor controls.
I have a set number of minutes by ordinance that I get to speak, right?
Well, there's a total of 15 during the public hearing, but right now, do you have another point you'd like to make? Because we've already understood that you don't believe that the paperwork
Well, I have
was
a
done appropriately, but
Are we going to adopt a procedure when we notify the residents?
we have a procedure in place, so.
But
And
you
we're
didn't.
following the,
You didn't follow it, though.
please, Phil, thank you. Does anyone else have anything they would like to bring up? Otherwise, we'll have the DNR rep. Oh, we've got Patrick.
Patrick again, 19 Point Road.
Hello, Patrick.
Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
Recently, the river dropped below 683 feet, which I believe is the threshold for no wake. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. Yeah. And as soon as it dropped below 683, the boats were going as fast as they could back and forth. And my dock was doing its bucking bronco routine. And you could stand there and watch the erosion happen on my property. In the future, I know I'm going to have to rebuild the dock, and I'm going to have to do some additional anchoring to keep it stable and in place. And I'd like to do some landscaping and other features to control my property, basically, and keep it from washing into the river. So my concern is certainly any additional restrictions that might be applied to my property that would limit my ability to manage it and keep it safe and the way it is. Okay.
Gotcha.
Are you referring to the increase in
The
the
similar,
the 4.5? What gentleman over here was referring to?
Correct. Yeah.
same issue? Okay.
I just want to know. Want to make sure.
Thanks for clarifying, Ethan. Okay. Anyone else with something other that they'd like to mention about the floodplain ordinance? Come on up.
My name's Chris Kringle. I live on the Point. I do have shoreline. I've been there for 28 years. I've been in the real estate business for over 40 years. I'm somewhat familiar with contracting, particularly government contracting, which is really contracting from attorneys. And I haven't seen what's been presented here tonight as far as the change to be voted in. But it sounds like typical government contracting where there's a whole bunch of vagueness. A comment that, well, that's not what that means, or that's not what it's intended, and that kind of thing. And my comment, I guess, in regard to all that is, there's plenty of money spent on coming up with whatever wants to be adopted, and I think there's a lot of deliberate action to cause things to be vague to the benefit of whoever's in control of the situation so they can control the people. And my suggestion, what I'd like to see is real contracting with specific terminologies and things, so it's not like, well, that's not what we meant to get it passed. But once it gets passed, this is what this means. This is exactly what it is, and you're in violation of it. See, the DNR did not vote for a single one of you people. We did. And we are who you represent here. So the fear I saw in a number of you, oh, we can't do this, the DNR will get upset. Oh, this, the hell with the DNR. We pay the taxes, we pay the expense of living on the river. We clean it up when there's a mess, and we suffer a lot of the wrath. And to be a fear of the DNR is just ludicrous. We should be a part of everything that has to do with our shoreline. We mentioned the boathouse there. How about if we passed an ordinance that you can't have a marina at your house? Which, by the way, we haven't been able to have a marina built in anyone's front yard for probably 30 years. Well, is the next move from the DNR is that everybody that has a marina has to fill them up because they're not quote unquote legal, like this fella's boathouse is here. It's like, it's part of the rules, fill up your marina. I can tell you a thing or two about value on things like boathouses and marinas and other aspects that are important about living on the river. And to have some government bureaucratic agency come in and say something and have our city council, who's our city council, almost run a fear of this government agency is totally ludicrous. It's abandoning who your people are. As far as attorneys go, they can make a 20-minute conversation out of a one-sentence comment. I see that in documentation and everything. The whole charter, all of the rules that have to do with many things regarding this city that we live in, needs to be readdressed, like I think you mentioned, and make it straight talking, say what it's supposed to say, and not have a bunch of holes of ambiguity so that, well, this, we can say this means this, or we can say this means that, and we can use this to get somebody because it's got so much interpretation, word you mentioned 3 times in your last comment, that we can use this to have control over our people. These people are the ones that you represent. They should know exactly what it is. Anything that's causing a change to their things that are significant to them and their property should be mailed out. We should see a copy of what it was, and here's what the proposed changes are, with plenty of time to review it. Any legal proceedings in the world isn't something that is acted on within 3 days, and the information isn't even given. I'm dealing with a lawsuit right now. Hell, the Washington County Court wants to see it.
Mr. Kringle, can we just
months.
keep it to this specific ordinance? And if you have specifics to it that you want to address, that would be great.
I think that everyone who's affected should get what changes the city is.
I agree.
honoring.
I'm disappointed that that was not a blue lined change as well, because I didn't realize that was changing at all, because it was not noted as a change.
Well,
so I
before
totally
you
agree,
vote
and I
on
understand
something,
what you're
that's my
saying.
suggestion is that let's know what we're talking about. Let's get rid of the ambiguities, and let's have everybody be able to comment on whatever they have a problem with an ambiguity.
Okay.
Instead of having vaguenesses that are big enough to drive a truck through.
All right. I think your point is taken. Thank you. All right, come on up, Greg.
Greg Ellingson, Lakeside Drive. If, Sarah, you mentioned it, and Madam Mayor mentioned the changes. Just a nutshell, what are the changes that, as you perceive them?
Well,
you both use that term.
Yeah,
the
there's
changes.
there's.
So again, just to give me a nutshell.
There's just from my understanding of what I got in the packet is there is the version of the ordinance that came from the state that had some blue lining through it that said these were the changes. Well, that means like strike through, like we're changing this part to say this, so that you could see what was going to be different from old ordinance to new ordinance without having to go like this. That's in the packet.
Okay. That we didn't get, but anyway, that's
well, it's out. It's online. I mean, I got it. I literally got this on Friday too. So, so there is that part in the packet.
If there's a summary, again, just
yeah, but I wish there wasn't a summary. So instead, we got then that version with the changes from the state that were noted, and then excuse me, it's hard to hear when you guys are talking. Excuse me, sorry. It's all right. It's just very echoey in here. So, and then there is the actual final document, I think, that was being submitted as our ordinance to be voted on. And that's all we got was those two versions. And you're right, it was, I got it on Friday and it was a lot. I didn't read it word for word because I didn't have time to.
Again, I don't mean to break it down to like 2 easy bullet points, but what are the substantive changes, Sarah, that you?
Yes, that would be great. Do you want to summarize that? That would be.
Get the legalese out of it, and
that would be awesome.
What are we changing?
So I did a side-by-side comparison of our current ordinance against the new model, and the meat of our current ordinance is all in the new ordinance. There aren't major changes. You can do this, you can't do that. Most of it is expanding on concepts, helping staff, like eliminating confusing concepts, like the vagueness, being more specific, helping staff be able to make determinations, or how should we apply this?
Determinations of what?
For the Jesperson project, for example, you know, we dealt with a lot of vagueness for different ordinances that applied there, and still there isn't a lot of clarity. There's still questions about what can and can't be done with the boathouse and some of those things. So this ordinance was really trying to help be a tool, be a useful tool for staff to do our jobs that we were hired for, and help the DNR, you know, do their jobs. So clarify permit requirements. When is a permit required? When isn't? Assisting with substantial damage or improvement determinations. Again, back to the boathouse, it's a really good example. Is this, you know, a substantial damage according to the code, and what does that mean for replacement or repair, those types of things. And then there's other, there's a whole nother set of regulations related to FEMA, and this ordinance isn't intended to not let people enjoy the river and do what you want to do and make home improvements, but it's also required to participate in a national insurance program, and the purpose is to make sure that people aren't building things where they shouldn't be and then ruining the insurance program for people who really need it. I think that's, you know, people think, well, it's not going to flood, or, you know, this barely floods, and then I want to build something here, and then, oh gosh, I have to make $1 million claim, and that ruins the program for everybody else. So does that help?
Okay.
Madam Mayor.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
To that point, Greg, we did struggle. We talked internally a lot about those elevations that Mr. Hayner had indicated. In theory, those elevations are not listed in our current ordinance, but they are still there. And the DNR can talk to this. They're still supposed to be regulated the same way, and we just clarified the numbers. Who's from? Is it Matt?
Yes, Matt, would you be willing to come to the podium and just elaborate specifically on the elevation comment? Sure. This is Matt Bauman from the DNR, and he has agreed to answer technical questions only this evening. So if you could.
I mean, I'll answer any questions.
Oh, okay.
Can you,
Thank you.
Matt, can you speak to that?
The elevation.
The elevation, the floodway
versus
specific.
The flood
yeah.
Yeah. So the flood insurance study, the St. Croix in this location has not had a formal flood insurance study. If you look at the flood map, the floodway, which is the inner portion of the entire floodplain, that's where the fast-moving water is. Traditionally, in a floodplain map, it'll show the flood fringe areas, the outer boundaries of the floodplain, as well as the inner boundaries of the floodplain, which is called the floodway. And the way floodplain regulation works is you reserve that floodway. You're very restrictive in the types of activities you allow in the floodway. So yeah, changing an elevation, if that's what you're doing, which you're not, it would be a very significant change.
Can you go back and explain when you just said?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. The two different elevations, 674.6. That's 88 datum. That's been historically the elevation used for setbacks, and it still is the elevation used for setbacks. I think it was a few decades ago, it might have been a couple of decades ago, the DNR, who makes a determination of where the ordinary high water level is, changed. It changed. It increased 5 feet to that 679.6 elevation. In situations where a floodway is not identified in the map, a developer has two options. They can hire an engineer and carry out a floodway delineation themselves. The city can do it, or the DNR can make a determination. Until a floodway is delineated, your ordinance says that you have to treat the entire floodplain as floodway. So the fact that the DNR has made a determination of where the floodway is, that streamlines the methodology by which you can make a floodway determination. The city and any applicant is still free to hire an engineer and challenge that floodway determination. But the DNR has made a determination of where that floodway is, and it's 679.6.
How long ago did you say the 674.6 went back to? Did you say 80s or am I misremembering?
Yeah, it's been a while. Yeah. And that's still the elevation used for setbacks. My understanding is that the river rarely gets below that elevation. So calling that the ordinary high water level is just simply not accurate. That's why it was changed.
The 679.6 is more accurate, historically speaking.
And that's the elevation that's used for permitting. Below that line impacts permitting for public waters purposes. So any activities below that line requires a DNR permit, or there's some activities that are exempt. And then that the more restrictive floodway standards would apply below that line as well.
Madam Mayor.
Yeah.
Can you clarify, Matt, has that, even though that number was not included in our current ordinance, that was still the elevation that was to be used for DNR permitting purposes?
That's correct. Yeah, there's been some, since it is so confusing, like if you look at the floodplain map for the St. Croix, it doesn't show flood, traditionally you're showing cross sections showing exactly what the flood elevation is at any given location. You're seeing exactly where the floodway is. The maps for the St. Croix in this location leave a lot to be desired. We created a memo in 2018 clarifying a lot of these points. That memo was shared with the city, and that's it. Even before that memo, this has been our position.
Okay, so what you're saying is that 679.6 may not have been specifically stated in our ordinance in the past, but it was the level that was used to define the...
Yeah, every time you process a permit in the floodplain, you have to know what zone you're in, whether you're in the flood fringe or the floodway.
Okay, so nothing really is changing, and that's why it wasn't blue lined, because it's not really a change, it's just a stating of the fact that already existed but wasn't clearly stated. Is that?
Madam Mayor, just to clarify too, the blue are the optional sections that we can choose to adopt or not to adopt. The whole document itself is full of changes, and those we went over and clarified, the permit requirements, those types of things. If there was a major change that wasn't in our current ordinance, we obviously would have, spelled that out in detail. But just to clarify, the blue sections were the optional sections that are a higher standard recommended by the DNR that we felt it's a good practice, allowing a permit without just being able to put more fill in, because that fill then potentially displaces water to other properties. That's just an example of, do we want to take a look at these things before we let someone automatically do them? Because a lot of these things have negative impacts if they're not engineered correctly, and then, it's not good for anyone.
Right. So as a city, we could choose a different level, but it wouldn't help because it would still have to go through a permitting process through the DNR at the other level. Is that making any sense?
Madam Mayor, I'll direct that question to Matt.
If you want to hire an engineer and redelineate the floodway, that we would have to review it, and we have mapping folks that would look at that model and verify it or not.
Okay, so it doesn't, I feel like there's a lot of maybe just misunderstanding of what was happening with this ordinance. Would you say that? Like the people that were coming up here and talking about how the change?
I would say that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Because I don't want anyone to feel like
the DNR is not making the city update an ordinance.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't have to approve an ordinance if you don't want to, but that's up to the council.
Okay. But that's kind of I mean, we want to make these changes because, explain, Matt, Sarah, like.
Yes, there are some definite improvements to this ordinance that we would prefer. A lot of clarification, better permitting guidelines, different things like that. So it is our intent to, from the city staff standpoint, to provide this update. Now, staff is more than willing and open to providing a red line version that shows all the changes that are proposed. A significant portion of them, like Sarah said, are already in our current ordinance, but just with clarifications. So that's up to the council.
Council, how you feeling? Confused?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
it is
am.
confusing.
I am.
Anyone have thoughts or comments or questions or?
I'd make a motion to table this until we can spend more time on it.
Madam Mayor.
Yes.
I would just ask potentially, does anybody from the audience have any clarifications that they want to hear after they heard from the DNR or anything like that?
Can you repeat that?
Does anyone want to come back up to the podium now that they've heard from the DNR? Come on up.
Again, what he was saying is, he's saying it doesn't make any changes. Well, to me, it makes a change because if I have to go through a permitting process, if the city hasn't put it in where I need to address it through the city, that's one less step I have to go through to get something done. I don't have to, if I need a permit and you say you can remain at the 675 level or 675.4, then I don't, and if then I don't have to go through you guys to get a permit for something. I just have to deal with these guys.
Is that the case?
And these guys are the DNR.
I guess I didn't take it that way.
John can answer that one, the city engineer.
City engineer. Oh, finally, John gets to talk. Yay!
Thank you. I was hoping to sit quietly for most of this, but fact of the matter is that permits are required already. So I wouldn't agree with that assessment that you don't require. Now we'd have to know specifically what you're talking about. Is it fill? Is it a building? Where is it located? And so on, so forth. But the city's floodplain ordinance applies to all lands in the floodway, regardless of where floodplain. Regardless of where the floodway flood fringe boundary is, you still have permitting jurisdiction over the entirety of the floodplain. And you also have permitting jurisdiction outside the floodplain. So in other words, the other lands that are covered by standard zoning classifications and the Bluffland Shoreland Ordinance. So it's hard for me to imagine a case where you would only require a state permit and not a city permit. Currently. So that does not change.
Okay.
Or vice versa, a city permit and not a state?
There are projects that require city permits, but not state permits. So that elevation that that Matt was mentioning, the 679.6 is already the line where DNR permitting jurisdiction is. So that doesn't change whether you adopt the ordinance or not, whether you adopt the ordinance with or without that number in it. That's already where their permit jurisdiction is. So that doesn't
Just
change.
put the number in there. Just
Yeah,
so it's there.
what's been missing all this time in this example is that the number hasn't existed in your ordinance. But it's still the floodway boundary is still there, or the permit jurisdiction boundary is still there. And it has been I've been working in the Lower St. Croix Valley since 2004. And so it's been like that since then.
I'm not suggesting we do this, but what is it in the city's prerogative to have a lesser of a threshold you know, in my world, I'm an electrician, you always need to meet the state threshold or be more restrictive, not less restrictive. Is that the case?
Well, I could
with
defer
this?
to others, but my understanding, see, we can't determine for the DNR where their permit jurisdiction starts and stops.
Okay.
So unless Matt or the attorney would have a different opinion, that's.
No, you're correct.
Do you have a comment you'd like to make at the podium?
Yeah, I just have a,
Okay.
for the good of the group.
Remember to state your name and address, please.
Jody Dayfield, 307 Lake Street South. For the good of the group, can we just table this discussion so that we have a chance to actually look through the 67 pages in it? Because I think there's a lot of those little nitty-gritty things that are gonna slide in, and you know, we're all gonna be like, oh, how did that happen? I happened to be busy over the weekend, so I didn't do my reading.
Mm-hmm.
And I would like to read it, and I'm sure other people would like to have some time looking at it. And I think that's a fair
I think that's fair
request.
unless there's some reason we need to pass it right this minute. I don't think there is, so.
Sarah, you made reference of like the red line and the blue line. Can we get all of that to the people so they can see everything? I don't know unless it's already done.
No, it was just a lot.
Madam Mayor,
It's gonna
Councilmember
be-
Gilmore, the reason staff did not prepare exact track changes is because it's renumbered, all the sections are reorganized. So for the average person who doesn't deal with ordinances every day, it's not gonna make any sense. It's gonna be very difficult to follow along. A lot of the information is very technical. We can try our best to put something like that together, but that's just even for the council and even for staff, it's very difficult
Well,
to.
how about we provide the two and people can disseminate it themselves?
I think it would be a lot of work for you to put that together if people aren't able to really make sense of it. I'm not sure it's worth your time. What I would like to see, I think if I were them, and maybe they don't trust it, but I would like to see the actual summary of these are in writing. These are the specific changes that happened. You know, from what we used to have as an ordinance to what there is now, like give me the summary of that versus the actual language change, but maybe that's a shortcut that they wouldn't trust. I don't know. I mean, I would think it would be easier for you to summarize what happened than to try to go and, you know, well, we moved section 1 down to section 3 and then we did this, or it just feels kind of like a lot.
Madam Mayor, I think we could work with the DNR to put together a bullet point list of these sections. We added clarification language, or this was modified slightly. I think we can put something like
Okay.
that together that will make sense to the general public for
Okay.
them to be able to digest that.
I think that would be helpful. Does that,
General,
people agree?
Again,
Okay.
Greg Ellingson, 515 Lakeside. General public, yes, but I don't know how you guys would vote on it. I mean, God
Right.
bless you for all this minutia. I don't know how you do it, but you know, Connie, how would you vote on this? Because I don't understand. What
I
you're
don't know,
saying.
because I got,
You know,
lost halfway
I mean,
through.
it's, in fairness to you, I don't know how you vote on this
Yeah.
without.
We have a lot of
You
faith
know.
in our city staff, and I talked
Well,
to Matt quite a bit about it, so I kind
we
of
got
had a
great
feeling
city
of
staff,
what was
but it's
going
like-
on, but yeah.
You guys
minutiae
come
is-
here.
Yeah.
I vote based on when you guys come here and you voice your opinions because you guys elected me. So, and I, of course, I respect our city staff. I respect everybody for what they do, but that plays a big role for me. You know, reading through this, it's like I read through it and I'm looking at it, and it's like you need to be a lawyer to understand half of this stuff.
Yeah.
So when you
Well,
guys
and-
came
and
up,
my
I had
business-
no idea the 4.5 feet and how that would affect your situation, and I'm glad you guys were here because otherwise it's one of those things that we just pass because it seems normal and no one's objecting to it, and we try to read through it and make our best decisions, but it's very important that people come in and step up and say, hey, this isn't, raise a flag for us, and then we can, like you say, table it, look at it, prepare things for you to make sure that everybody's comfortable with it, and I think that's our job. And
I think Sarah's point, if you guys can bring it to a understandable format, that you guys can actually vote on it intelligently. I mean, without just saying the city staff suggests this and that's what we're going to go with. I mean, then we don't need a council.
Well, Matt does give us time to ask questions.
Yeah, and I at
That's-
least get to talk.
He does
all we're gonna do is
explain
rubber
when we
stamp the
don't
city.
understand it, so I don't want you to think.
Yeah, we don't.
But if you don't, I don't think, not to put you on the spot, but I don't think any of you could tell me in a nutshell, in 5 bullet points, what what the highlights of this are. And I didn't hear it.
Well, one of the big ones, there was the huge outcry and emails flying back and forth was somehow that
we were going to start invading people's
But
homes.
I'm not talking about the emails. I'm talking about how you interpret this, John.
Okay, let John talk.
So that was kind of what I focused on in it, and I wasn't seeing that in there. It was a lot, and I was reading it on my phone of all things, so that wasn't very fun. But
no.
So yeah, then I come here and I hear different elevation numbers that I've not heard before, and it's out of left field. So yeah, I already kind of whispered to the mayor that I would like to make a motion to table. So
okay, all right. Should we take that as a motion from John to table this and have the summary
and direct staff to come up with some sort of reasonable summary?
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
All right.
Leave your names at the door so you guys all get copies though, so.
Well, they should all be.
Well, no, that wasn't being sarcastic.
Right, do we?
One thing I would like to say, the city staff, like, we're council members and we put in time, but we literally cannot read through and understand. I mean, I know we have to, but that's what we rely on them to summarize things for us and to give us recommendations. And I know lately I've gone against them a couple times, but that's still their job, and they do a fantastic job of it. 95% of every vote I've made as this council has been on the recommendation of them, and they do a fantastic job. There's no question about that. I'm just glad, like I said, that this was brought up, because I don't believe they probably thought that this was going to have so much, people, not understanding it and being upset about it. I don't think they had any idea. We were sitting here at the thing today. Well, wow, we got a bunch of people come today.
Yeah.
Nothing on it looked like anything was like, oh wow, this is a super controversial. Like when we did the speed limits, we had Barber's out fence, and apparently before my time, the dog park. Those things were big things, and we knew that was coming. But today, we didn't know this was coming, and I don't believe the staff did either, and I don't think anyone was. We're not trying to pull a fast one and put it out for just a few days and then try to pass it. That's not their intention. It's certainly not my intention. I don't speak for everybody else on the council, but just those guys do a fantastic job. So.
They do. Thank you, Ethan. All right, so we have a motion to table and have the direct staff to create a summary of the changes to the ordinance, and we have a second. So can I just say all those in favor? All those in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? All right, thank you all for helping us do our jobs better. Without you, we don't always know what people have concerns about. So thank you for coming.
Thank you.
And if you would,
Mr. Dinar.
If you feel like, is this a good time where everyone's going to make noise and
Now
leave?
you're all
We'll do
gonna
that. We'll take a quick little break while you guys all say goodbye. All right. Thank you. Thank you all for coming.
How's it going, Jay?
All right.
Get a waterproof library? No, we can probably figure out some way to move it. Okay.
What?
We'll adjust it.
We'll figure out how to adjust it.
Well, I'd appreciate that because I was moving damn home. And I don't even think there's some weather strips.
No, I'm sure that.
We do it, keep it.
Right.
Sort of stick an umbrella over that.
We'll figure it out. Okay.
Hey, Carl, will you help us by closing that door? Okay, he's got it.
Okay.
That's what I was.
All right.
It probably will
Thank
be,
you.
because I do zoning. If it's building permit stuff,
All
I
right.
have to set up a meeting with an inspector.
Let's get back to business here.
What type of improvement?
Excuse me.
Someone here.
Right?
Yeah, either matter, I can help you.
All right. We're going to resume our meeting. Thank you for coming. All right. Now we are on new business 3, right? Yeah, okay. Consider an amendment to Appendix A subdivisions of the Bayport City Code of Ordinances. Whew. All right. Sorry. That is going to be Sarah.
Okay, another ordinance. Let's try this
I
again.
know, and no one seems to care about this one.
No.
So.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, the subdivision ordinance defines general provisions for regulating a change in land use and ensuring development is in compliance with the city's comprehensive plan. Specific design and performance standards are outlined in the ordinance for such items as lot and block layout, streets, alleys, easements, utilities, stormwater, etc. The ordinance also requires a financial security from a land developer to ensure compliance with the subdivision requirements. In preparation for a potential plat application to the city, the developer for the Baytown Concept Development Eco Haven questioned the city on options for financial security, specifically the requirement for an escrow or a letter of credit. In response to this inquiry, staff discussed and reviewed other cities' ordinances and have confirmed that a financial security at 125% of the total cost for the development is the most common amount secured through a lender and adequate to cover development costs as opposed to 150% currently listed in our ordinance. Staff has also determined that a performance bond is no longer a suitable option for financial security due to the difficulty with the city actually being able to collect the fees in case of default by the developer. As a result, staff is proposing to amend the escrow and letter of credit financial security to reflect 125% and eliminate the option of a performance bond. Again, the Planning Commission held a public hearing on the ordinance amendments on May 22nd. No public comments were heard, and the Planning Commission recommended approval to the City Council 5-0. At this time, Matt and I would be happy to take any questions.
I don't have any. Does anyone else have questions about it?
Nope.
No, again, this went through the Planning Commission when they recommended approval, so. This one seems pretty straightforward, but we thought lots of things were
Right.
straightforward and they weren't, so you never know.
I'll make a motion if you guys are ready.
Sure.
I'll move to adopt amendments to Appendix A subdivisions of the Bayport City Code of Ordinances and summary for publication as presented.
Thanks, John. Do you have a second?
Second it.
All right, Connie seconded. Roll call vote. It says in my thing.
Oh, sorry, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Carlson.
Aye.
Councilmember Dahl.
Aye.
Councilmember Gilmore.
Aye.
Councilmember Hill.
Aye.
Mayor Hansen.
Aye.
All ayes.
All right, thank you. Number 4 under new business, consider a joint powers agreement with St. Paul Park for law enforcement services. Chief Eastman's going to present this item. She didn't know. She looks surprised.
Piece of cake.
Piece of cake.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and Council. I presented the joint power agreement, and the situation here is that with the world the last few days, years, months, it's been stressful on law enforcement to find adequate staff. And so we're in a predicament in St. Paul Park, which is obviously in Washington County, where they had staff retire, move on to bigger agencies for more income. And the Washington County Sheriff's Office has been assisting St. Paul Park. If we back forward to 16 years ago, there was a time when we met at a workshop, Connie was there, and we talked about contracting with Washington County because for staffing reasons at one time when I first took over. So, and the same thing happened up in Forest Lake. You might recall that they almost contracted. They were losing people and what have you. The bottom line is they don't have enough staff right now to fulfill all of their shifts, but they would like to keep their own police department because they believe that that's best for their city. So what they did was they put this joint power agreement with the attorneys and they sent it out to all the agencies in Washington County. So we're coming into the summer months and Washington County isn't available to cover all the summer months because people want to take vacations. So I put it out to staff, is anyone interested? And a few people said that they would assist. And so hopefully our agency with everybody else can keep them afloat until they can backfill those positions. The joint power agreement basically states that we would use our uniforms, their squad cars, their body-worn cameras, because their body-worn cameras link with their squad cameras and their computers. We'd use our radios. So basically, we have a set overtime rate to include the health and care insurance. It's called FICA. So we have a rate that comes out. In fact, our staff do use that same rate for TZD, towards zero death, for enforcement for state grants like seatbelt enforcement that we get money from the state to do extra overtime to focus on DUI, seatbelt, speeds, what have you. So we already have that rate. So what would happen is I would keep track of it, and this would be through until I retire, because even when I'm on vacation, I will be putting some hours in towards that. So I'm not going to just vacation out when I leave at the end of July and give Jay an opportunity to do some interim. I will still be getting emails. I'll still be doing a lot of I still have to figure out budget stuff, and I would keep track of their shifts, and then I would invoice them. And that's basically what Sheriff Starry is doing right now. So I think that covered it. And speaking of the chief, she believes that their squad cars will be less confusing too, because they're seeing a lot of different. So if we pull up in their squad cars, which makes sense because we'd be using their body-worn cameras, their computers that download, but would be in our uniform. So they would know that we were from Washington County.
Yeah. And I think that's all great. And I would hope that they would do that for us if it ever came to that. So the only thing that I questioned was it was not clear what we were providing, what they were providing, the way it's written. So I suggested some changes to the language, because right now it says Bayport shall be solely responsible for identifying, supplying officers with equipment and supplies necessary to perform services, including, as Bayport deems appropriate, squad cars. And I was like, wait, we're using our cars? That doesn't seem right. And so I think that was left open so that the agency, if the agency wanted to use theirs. Can we make this like actually match what we want to do though, so that we know what we did if we ever do it again? And
I did exactly what you said over the weekend. I did it this morning, but we wanted you guys to decide if there were any other changes before I brought it over to our attorney.
Good idea.
But I've already changed what you required.
Okay.
You know, I think her thought was some of the, like Washington County wants to use their own because they have their rifle mounted. Like we have, pepper ball, those kind of things. So part of it was based on what your agency wants. It doesn't mean that we can't bring our pepper ball weapon with us because it's a less lethal and it's sometimes better utilized in that versus a taser.
So I feel like they wrote it so it could hopefully apply to anyone, but
whoever.
When you read it, it's not clear what we actually are providing and what we're not. So
correct.
Okay. So you will make those changes.
I have. But I wanted you all the way in, and then I would send it back to the attorney.
Okay. Does anyone else have any comments or questions about it?
I'll be honest, I didn't spend as much time on this particular item as some of the other things. I remember not finding a date, or doesn't something like this
where
have
you
a date?
are.
I think it's September 4th or 7th or something.
But
like
it's
that.
not. It wasn't filled in.
Okay.
It's right around in there. Oh, God, my darn pancakes. But yeah, the date is, it said June 1st, but it's actually June 6th or whenever we approve it, right? That it would actually start.
Correct, Madam Mayor. Yes.
And it goes through the, end of September?
No, it's like
First of
after
September?
Labor Day.
Okay.
That's filled in now too.
It is filled in.
It's filled
Okay.
in ahead of time, but
Thank you.
get to you.
That's
Okay.
good enough for me.
Yeah. All right. So no more questions or anything, or do we have a motion?
Go ahead, Katie.
I move to approve the joint power agreement with St. Paul Park Law Enforcement Services with the changes that we talked about.
Perfect.
No other changes that you, okay.
Just the dates.
Just the
Just
dates,
the dates
right?
and
then
separating out actually defining which services.
what you already fixed.
Okay.
Okay. Second
I'll second
came
it.
from Ethan. Thank you. All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that
Chief.
to us, Laura. All right. And now we have the consider appointment for a new public works director. This is going to be presented by Matt.
Madam Mayor, members of the council.
Happily.
As you already know, we advertised for a new public works director. A total of 12 applications were received, of which 4 semi-finalists were selected, 3 were interviewed. We have some good candidates, and we determined that Simon Worth was our candidate of choice. He has accepted a conditional offer of employment at grade 10, step 2, pending a completed background investigation and obviously subject to city council approval. Simon has over 5 years of progressive experience in the public works field, primarily working for the city of Lakeland, and his tentative start date is probably early July. Staff is recommending the city adopt a motion hiring Simon Worth as Public Works Director, pending the background investigation and the terms negotiated during the hiring process. Stand for questions.
Did you, he was just in Lakeland, did you know him prior to this?
I did not. He took over the position probably about maybe 6 months to a year after I have left. First, he was initially just their their water operator, and then slowly took over different items as he got used to it, including directing road construction projects, treatment plant upgrades. He's had his water tower experience, so everything that we were kind of looking for.
Yeah, I was able to actually be in on the interviews, just to kind of represent the council in there too. We had Josh Eisinger from Public Works was there too to represent the staff down there, and I think Simon is an excellent candidate for us. I think it's really nice that he has experience in a river town, because we all know there's things like what came up tonight that, like you have to understand a little bit more about how those things work. And he just seemed like, we kept saying he's a lot like Matt. So in his experience and just, I don't know. So yeah, I think it's going to be a really good fit. And Josh was super excited about him being there too. So he had actually, he's a firefighter with Lower St. Croix Valley. So Josh had been on one call with him and just saw how he worked in that situation. And I think he had a ringing endorsement from Josh as well. So
Kyle Peltier also.
Yes.
I knew Simon when he was little.
You did?
Oh yeah, he played hockey with Mike.
Okay.
When he was little.
Yeah, so I think we're really lucky to have such a great fit for our city apply for this job. So that's my 2 cents.
All right, I'll move to approve the appointment of Simon Worth as the new Public Works Director at salary grade 10, step 2, pending a completed background investigation and with terms as negotiated during the hiring process.
And I'll second that motion.
Awesome. All right. All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay. Matt will be so relieved. We finally get someone on. So, all right, because he won't be starting until probably the end of the month or something like that. Is that what we decided?
It most likely will depend. I know the memo says July. It'll probably depend on whether he gave notice already.
Okay.
Usually we recommend not giving notice before council approves, but that's up to the candidate.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Their
So
confidence
we
level.
plan on having him.
Yeah, he'll
like,
come to the next
in-
meeting. Right.
Absolutely,
the
he will
July
be
meeting.
attending the next meeting. Yep.
Awesome. Okay, so now we're on to council liaison reports. Let's start on that end, Connie.
I have nothing to report. I was out
Okay.
of town in Michigan.
Okay.
Kind of unexpectedly. So.
All right, that's fine, and we usually get the update from Jill about what's going on at the library, so that's always helpful. Ethan, did you have a cable commission?
I
meeting?
did, yes, in May. We got our audit results back and Red Path issued an unqualified clean opinion. Not sure exactly what that means.
Isn't that what we usually get too when we
Clean, I'm assuming is good.
Yeah.
2 items noted: lack of ideal segregation of duties as expected
That's
due to
what-
the size of our agency, administrator completing all of the accounting tasks. The other one, general ledger maintenance. Last year's audit identified an issue with posting of deposits that have been resolved mid-year. Approval of disbursements, and then we are looking to get a 3-year extension with Comcast, a franchise extension request, I guess. There were some concerns about going too far out based on the future of HD channels and SD channels, but it's all stuff that you wouldn't even know unless you're there, so
Okay.
it's probably fine.
Probably fine.
And then we're good.
Right.
Yeah, that's what we talked about.
All right, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
John?
No meetings, so I
It's
have
not
nothing.
until next, this Thursday or something? Yeah, and you're able to go this time? Okay, great. Katie?
Yeah, so BCAL was May 11th. They talked about, well, a lot of it was, you know, bar crawl was getting ready, so they were doing all that. Ice cream socials this Wednesday, so if anybody wants to go down to Lakeside for ice cream while supplies last.
Is that 6? I think it's 6.
Yeah, 6 to 8, which is the last day of school too, so I think that'll be nice.
Very exciting.
And then the farmer's market's starting next week. And the garage sales went off this weekend too, really nice. I biked around town looking for them. And Derby Days is right on schedule. It seems they're getting a lot of stuff done. Big thing is if you ever want to know where the events are that BCal's putting on, is go on their Facebook page, because they have an event, an actual event for every event that you can say you're going to, and then you get a reminder the week before or the day before, and everybody had that signed up. I also had the Planning Commission meeting on May 22nd. They voted on a new, or the chair and the co-chair. It's still the same, so Ms. Kelly is the chair and Ms. Siegfried is the co-chair. And then the two that we went over, the flood plan, they approved bringing it to us, and then the
ordinance.
the 125 changing it to 125. And that's it.
All right. Thank you. Okay, so I had quite a few things in May. It was a busy month. I went to the Bayport Fire Department Relief Association board meeting. Things are going great there. They're doing a good job managing the money. Also attended the facilities planning team meeting for the school district as a city representative on that same night. And then May 13th, I went to the bar crawl, which was super fun, and I didn't have to actually be in charge of anything. I just got to go and have fun. And then I did the public works director interviews a couple days. I also attended for us the Chamber 101, because I'm an ambassador to the Chamber, because I'm really trying harder to get them to remember that it's not all about Stillwater. So, and then I went to the Chamber ribbon cutting for the Legion. They did one for their 100 years, even though it was last year, on May 18th. Lake Elmo Airport Advisory Commission on May 22nd. They just recently finished putting in a new longer runway that they needed to make it safer for some of the planes it was the shortest runway in the state or something before they put in this new one. So, and then the old runway is going to be used as a taxiway. They actually have 2 runways that crisscross. And they still have the one household that makes 600 and some complaints each quarter. The other thing that I found really interesting at that meeting was, I did not know this, but they have an aircraft viewing area. So you can go and it's open to the public, go hang out, and you can watch the planes take out. And every meeting they'll do a spotlight on one of the airport users. And so you get to kind of they're super friendly, and they want you to come and visit them and stuff. So you go check out the hangars and the planes, especially young kids. I think they would think it was really fun. And they actually are on some of the other smaller airports. They're doing some cool event, but we don't get to have one at Lake Elmo this year. So hopefully next year. And then next month, so this month was the spotlight on the city too. So they do a different city that they spotlight, and this time it was Oak Park Heights. So we got a little background on what Oak Park Heights does for their events and stuff, which is kind of cute. And next time it's our city, so I got to put something together. I met with Mike Wilhelmi. He's the community relations manager at Excel, just to kind of get to know him on May 26th. He reached out, and I thought it's always good to know someone before you end up in a situation where you have to have some other more professional meetings. So we had a nice chat. He actually lives in Bayport now, so that's also cool. Memorial Day parade and ceremony was on May 29th. Super beautiful day. The ceremony was really nice. So thank you to Jim Menard, who plans all of that. Our Lions Club wants to be in the parade next year, so it's kind of exciting. So hopefully we'll get to do that. And then also attended the Minnesota Small Cities Legislative Recap webinar on May 30th, just to kind of understand how things that passed in the legislature, how that affected our city. And a lot of the main takeaway I had is there was some funding that we're going to get, which I think Matt summarized in an email to us, where we're going to get some public safety funds and some other increased LGA, which we need to be careful about being too reliant on, but that was all kind of good news. And then today I went to the Habitat for Humanity, like, opening, I don't know what you call it, ribbon cutting or something, because the house is completed and they have a family set up. It's over on 2nd Street and 2nd Avenue, basically. Let's say kind of in that kind of kitty corner from Peril Park. So my husband and I got to actually go help with that house at one point. I did some painting and he put siding up, and the CEO of Habitat for Humanity is former Mayor Chris Coleman, so I got to meet him today as well. So nice event. Anderson Windows does a lot to contribute monetarily and with windows and with staff to do those homes, and that's our second one now in Bayport. And they are always looking for more homes, and we talked about maybe highlighting that in our next newsletter, talking about how people can help with things, and if they have a home to sell, to maybe sell it to Habitat. So that's it for me. And all right, now Matt, you want to call on all the staff that's here?
Madam Mayor, thanks. In the interest of time, unless the chief really wants to talk, no?
No?
Okay.
Okay, good.
I can run through a couple of things.
Perfect.
We did have a school relocation discussion tonight at the workshop, and just reiterate again that our plan is to have a public forum on June 21st at 6 to 8 p.m. at the library. Postcards and multiple different other public engagement will be sent out to verify that. As the mayor had indicated, state legislature, it was one of the biggest spending sessions ever. We received one-time public safety funding, which can be used for police and fire. We also had a significant bump in local government aid. There's also new requirements for family and medical leave. Of course, cannabis was legalized, and there's also money available for lead water line mitigation, which Bayport has more galvanized lines than per se lead lines, but there are gooseneck connections that are connecting the galvanized line to the main, and so hopefully we qualify for some of that money also. Finally, I'll be working on the budget here. I've already sent it out to a couple of department heads to get moving on that, and we'll be setting up a budget meeting rather soon. A couple of dates we should be looking at are June 12th is the Farmers Market kickoff at Village Green Park. June 19th, city offices will be closed as it's National Independence Day holiday, Juneteenth. And then that's all. I stand for questions.
All right, thanks, Matt. Anyone have any questions? No, we're all ready to go, I think. Okay. Anyone have any other items or announcements they'd like to make? City Council? No. All right, does anyone make a motion? To adjourn?
I'll move to adjourn.
John's ready and Ethan's ready. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Anyone want to hang out longer? Okay, we are adjourned.